Welcome to Dare to Soar with your host, Dr. RC. Dr. RC will empower, encourage, and strengthen you. She will help you to soar to your highest potential while instilling hope. Please welcome the host of Dare to Soar, Dr. RC.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dare to Soar, the show where we elevate voices, expand perspectives, and explore the issues shaping our communities and our profession. Of course, I am Dr. RC, and as always, I'm honored to create a space where meaningful conversations take flight. Today's conversation is just timely. And I had to pause there. It's not only timely, it is absolutely necessary. You see, we're living in a time where the landscape of education, policy, and equity is shifting rapidly, where conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion are being challenged. Hold on to that, because it's getting ready to get deep. And where the role of social workers has never been more critical. Because in times like these, we're not just practitioners, we're advocates, we're truth tellers, and protectors of dignity and justice. And today we are joined by a leader who embodies all of that and more. You see, Dr. Ashley Johnson is a dynamic school social worker, adjunct professor, and education consultant committed to advancing equity, social justice, and transformation practices with educational systems. As an adjunct professor in the Master of Social Work program at Western Kentucky University, she is shaping to prepare the next generation of social workers to lead with purpose, ethics, and a deep understanding of the evolving needs of students and communities. With extensive experience in school based practice, Dr. Johnson brings a powerful blend of real world insight and authentic engagement in her work. She is known for challenging educators and leaders, reflect deeply in how they show up in education spaces, how students show up, whether current practices are truly helping or unintentionally harming the young people they serve. As an education consultant, she partners with schools and organizations to disrupt inequitable systems. She strengthens social emotional practices and builds cultures rooted in collaboration, consistency, and accountability. But that's not all. Her work is grounded in actionable strategies, meaningful dialogue, and sustainable changes that centers the whole child. At the core of her leadership is a commitment to advocacy, relationship building, and elevating student voice and dignity. And in recognition of her impact, she was honored as inaugural recipient of the National Social Justice and Equity Award from the School Social Work Association of America, a distinction that not only highlights her work, but underscores the urgency and importance of this moment in our profession. She also serves as a board chair and the state president of the Tennessee Association of School Social Workers, continuing to lead, influence, and advocate at multiple levels. Dr. Johnson, welcome to Dare to Soar.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Absolutely. Now, let me tell you, let me say this before we get started. Social workers across the globe, I want you to get ready because, as I stated, I want to say this: equity, 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 equity. And I'm saying this loud and proud because this is a word that is feared, but we cannot fear it. We
Mm-mm.
cannot shy away from it. We will not shy away from it because when we look at our NASW Code of Ethics, it is in there. It is something that we have to stand on and take a stance on because if we don't, who will?
Mhm.
That's why we wear the badge of honor of social workers. And I'm going to let you hold on to that because I want to get into this conversation with Dr. Johnson. And as I read in her bio, which is just a snippet of the things that she's doing And that's why I wanted to specifically have her on here. And as we jam into this, and I'm dating myself when I use the word jam into this conversation. We're probably going to have to go into a commercial break, but I don't want to belabor this because I want to get into all that I have to ask her this morning. So, with that being said, Dr. Johnson, can you share your journey into social work and what initially called you to this profession?
Oh gosh. I would say I initially got started in this profession. I'm originally from Kentucky. I currently live in Tennessee, but working as a mental health associate in my high school, coming back into my high school, and really seeing how students were being treated that were coming from a less fortunate area in our hometown or in my hometown. And so it was, okay, this is what I love doing. At the time, I was a graduate assistance coordinator and a mental health associate. So the school kind of brought me in two roles. And being a student there and having the experiences that I did as a Black girl coming through a predominantly white school district, seeing the things that I experienced and then coming back into the school system working, I was just, okay, this is my passion, being able to support students, fighting for equity, fighting for, fairness and all those things. And so then I was like, I want to be in the school district. I want to stay in the school system and things. And so that's where it started. So then got my master's in social work. And then I was like, ooh, I can get certified, and get a certificate in school social work. And that's what I did. And that led me to coming into the city of Memphis after that year. And being here just opened up a wider range of just like, oh, there's need some changes in the state of Tennessee when it comes to like supporting students that look like me. And that was, my path into school social work.
I love that. I love that. And that's what it's all about. It's about making a difference and wanting to
Mhm.
take a stand and not being afraid to take a stand. So that was just our first question, guys. Yes, this is Dare to Soar. And we are daring to soar today. I'm getting the
Mhm.
signal. I told you it was going to be a time for a commercial break. I knew it, but that was just the tip of the iceberg of what we're going to be talking about. So you have time. Go get that coffee, that tea, that water while we're on commercial break. We will be right back with more. See you after the break.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays 10 a.m. Eastern, as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back. Yes, this is Dare to Soar, and I am Dr. RC. I am speaking with Dr. Ashley Johnson. And what are we talking about? I am so glad that you're wondering. So, if you missed that first question, let me give you the title so you can catch up. Justice in Action: Leading, Advocating, and Rising in a Time That Demands More. I want to dive right back into our questions because, as I shared, I have so much more that I want her to respond to. Now, Dr. Johnson, you hold multiple leadership roles.
Mhm.
How have those experiences shaped your perspective on advocacy and impact?
Oh, wow. That's where it starts, right? Of
Mhm.
identifying that in some aspect of being a leader. It doesn't necessarily mean there's a title attached to it, but your stance on things and just advocacy must happen at every level, whether it's one on one with the student, whether it's with families, conversations with students, really stepping up in staff meetings and where difficult truths really have to be discussed and challenging some of the conversations and things that are being or taking shape in a space of whereas a school social worker even as an advocate you have to kind of knock on the table and be like no that's not going to work right and be that disruptor as I call myself and at times but it's also where we have to be represented because we have to show up in spaces where students and families' voices are sometimes kind of pushed to the side. And then I think serving in leadership role also shows the impact doesn't always have to be immediate, but essentially it's changing the language, it's shifting mindsets, challenging harmful practices, even as social workers, that we have to kind of, be reflective of are we causing harm or are we helping?
Yes.
And really mentoring even future social workers or colleagues, I like to call them when they're coming through programs, and opening doors for others of saying that you can do this work too. Let me give you some tips on how to do this work. But leadership is also it has also taught me that again, titles do not change.
Mhm.
It's essentially just having courage, being consistent, and also having accountability. I think that's something that is very important when it comes to leadership is having that accountability.
I love that. And that just what popped in my head is getting uncomfortable to be comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That is so clear. Oftentimes, we see things happening, especially when we get to those top tier levels. And when we're speaking about organizations, also,
Mm-hmm.
we can't ignore what is happening, especially when we're organizing together. Oftentimes when we see things come up, topics, issues, concerns come up, we can't pass them by. We can't say, well, I don't want to touch that because, but the impact is real, especially when individuals, as you were sharing, when you're talking to students and you call it, when you refer to them as future colleagues, because they are future colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for information, they're searching for information, they're grasping on to see for that knowledge, that those things, even membership, when we're talking on those levels, even you know um our colleagues that we work with, they're looking for that information, and it's key, it's important. They're looking for that guidance, and
Mm-hmm.
all of those things, it is critical. And if they're not able to get that guidance from said individuals, they're going to search for it someplace else. And if they have to go to inside entities instead of the source, that's not going to be beneficial. And that means that the information that they're receiving is
Mm-hmm.
not going to be relevant to individuals who have studied the work that is being done. And those
Absolutely.
resources are not going to be what's needed at that time. But I'm going to get off
Mm-hmm.
my soapbox. We're going to get back to Dr. Johnson and let her go for this, because this is a conversation that we're having. Justice in action, leading,
Mm-hmm.
advocating, and rising in a time that demands more. And we are certainly in a time that demands more. So
Mm-hmm.
we are navigating significant shifts. Um,
Mm.
and yes, I know that's a conversation. In education and policy, how are these changes showing up in the daily work of school social workers? I know that's a hot question. I know it is.
It
I know it
It
is.
it is, because it's showing up in so many different capacities, right? Like, you're seeing an increase in student mental health needs, where it can be reflective in, like, chronic absenteeism, family stress, But then it's also on staff as well, because you
Mhm.
have staff burnout, you have trying to navigate behavioral escalations, and then just dealing with your own leadership in itself as a school social worker and navigating these different spaces when you see a shift in education and how policy is impacting that, and how that shifts down to, us as practitioners in the schools. And so, seeing opportunity gaps even widen even more, and then seeing how do you step into that and really support students and support families. But at the same time, you're asking social workers to do all these things with fewer resources. So that also becomes, you know, a shift and a change, even though we weren't really given resources, but now it's even more limited than what we were getting. But then again, like policy changes that show up through uncertainties and questions around funding and access to services. Um, Equity initiatives, how that's being shifted, and that word, it becomes that, that taboo word. You can't really say it, can't talk about it, along with, SEL. And so it's how schools really respond to student needs, and we have to be
Mhm.
creative in that space. And so in many ways, I would say like school social workers are being called to really stabilize systems, where we're also like serving as crisis responders, clinicians, family liaisons, advocates, consultants, attendant supports, and all those things. And it requires us to both be adaptive and unwavering in our ethics. But then you have to really stand in like what our code of ethics are, and are you adhering to those? How does that
Mhm.
impact you on a professional, personal, and political standpoint? So I
Mhm.
think that's where a lot of the shifts that in education and policy, where school social workers are having to really navigate and really be reflective.
Mm. And what a way to go to a commercial break. So, navigating significant shifts. You heard it. Dr. Ashley Johnson has shared it. Ponder over it. Grab your friends. Have them to tune in while we go on this commercial break. She'll be right back after the break with more.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant. Like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back once again. Yes, I am Dr. RC, and this is Dare to Soar. I am joined by my guest, Dr. Ashley Johnson. Oh, yes, school social worker, education consultant, adjunct professor, board chair, state president, and the recipient of the first National Social Justice Award. And congratulations to you once again
Yeah.
on being the recipient of that award. She's dropping so many gold and platinum nuggets, as I like to call them, on this topic, justice in action. She was just dropping some as we spoke about navigating significant shifts. I want to dive right back in or jump right back into my line of questions that I have for her because there are so many other great tips or informational tips that she will be dropping for each and every one of you as you're tuned in this morning. So, with that being said, we're going to shift to leadership. What does leadership look like in moments when systems feel uncertain or just even resistant to equity focused work?
Wow, that's a loaded question, right?
I know. Whew.
It's loaded. But I would say in those moments, leadership really looks like steadiness. Like you have to be steady because you have to be the leader to lead that ship that you have with other people that are on there. So when it comes to being and dealing with resistance, really just again just remaining grounded in the values when others are actually reacting or being reactive out of fear. And so it means like speaking truth to professionalism, using data, but with intended purpose to really say, this is why we have to do what we're doing. This is why we have to challenge what is coming our way, because the data is showing up. This is what we have to stand on, and in refusing to allow discomfort to become the reason to not to become inactive. So just because there's a fear of being uncomfortable or I don't want to challenge this or I'm scared or I'm hesitant, but it's just like our work is founded in that, right? We
Mhm.
This is what you signed up for as being a school social worker or a social worker practitioner in general. So when systems essentially are resistant, I think we have to remember that we serve people, not systems.
Mhm.
And leaders also must have to ask like who really benefits from maintaining the status quo. And if we become part of that system that, upholds that status quo, then we become complicit and no longer really compliant to what we are supposed to be doing as social workers. And so it goes to who is being harmed by, like I said earlier, like are we helping or are we harming? We have to be reflective in that. And so having an equity focused leadership, it's just not about being popular, I guess, in a sense, but it's more about being disciplined, being principled. Again, going back to leadership, having that steadiness of leading the people around you in that ship when you may see people that may be fearful of just knowing that we're going to be okay, right? We have to be on the other side of this. So it requires courage. It requires emotional intelligence. It requires the willingness to really to keep going and be persistent, even when progress feels slow or feels stagnant or you feel like there's just too many barriers to overcome. But I just think that if you're leading from a sense of that there needs to be a change, that this isn't right, um, leading from humanity in a
Yes.
sense, really, will guide you in that. And again, it just comes back to really being steady and just really knowing that you're in a marathon. It's not a sprint when it comes to challenging the status quo and in systems. So I think it's just really um, just looking and defining how you show up as a leader and how you're wanting to lead.
Mhm. Now that humanity little clip needs to go on a PSA because that piece, you need to coin that. And I'm serious because
Mm,
going back to that foundation itself, oftentimes I feel that some individuals, and I'm not saying all, so Dr. RC and Dr. Ashley Johnson are not saying that everyone. So let me put that caveat out there, guys. Let me just say that that's not what
right,
we just said, but it's true. There's a saying, and I'm probably gonna sound like a country girl when I say this: "Lost in the sauce." You probably
right,
have heard that term. You often get lost in the sauce because you get caught up in thinking, well, if we say this, somebody's going to say this, but we can't always please everyone. But
right.
humanity, when
Hmm.
you stay grounded in humanity,
Hmm.
and when you do that and stay true to that and
Hmm.
remember that, that keeps you grounded and focused. And that is what is important. And
Hmm.
that is what truly matters. So coin that, Dr. Johnson. I'm telling you, that's some good stuff right there. Really.
Thank you.
It absolutely truly is, really. So that's a great segue. And I'm looking at the time. We may have to go to commercial break, but it's a great segue into when we say social justice in social work.
Mm,
What? I know. I'm giving you some
mm.
hot, good stuff here. I know it. I know it. What does that truly look like in action, not just theory? Oh my gosh.
Woo.
And I'm saying that because, you know, right before, what I usually do is right before I go on air, I give a little teaser as to what I'm going to be talking about. And,
Mhm,
and I'm sure you and our colleagues also, right now, when we think about how critical our profession and what it's going through, it's
mhm,
almost like, we're in a spin cycle right now with our profession, really. Because when you say that social work is not a profession, and we toil with that and think of all of the things that social work is, and
mhm.
even going back further, our coursework
Right.
and the training that we go through, and to have that question, it's almost like it just makes you feel like, it
Mhm,
cringes you. It really
mhm,
does. And you think about all the lives that you touch
mhm.
and the outcomes that you have in that process. And you have to sit back and say, wow, it's not a profession.
Right.
Let's all get together, all of us together, and let's really assess this and pour into one another. If that could be done, then really, are we really even having this conversation?
Right.
Make that make sense. So,
Right.
going to that question, I know we're going to have to go to commercial break, but yeah, yeah. I just had to get that out because it's just okay. And it's time. I don't want you to answer
Okay.
that yet. But when we
Okay.
return from our commercial break, that's going to be the question. When we say
Okay.
social justice and social work, what does that truly look like in action, not just theory? Guys, we're going to go to a commercial break. And when we return, that's the question that Dr. Johnson will be responding to. And I will repeat it when we come back from commercial break.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk. What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation.
Welcome back once again. Yes, it is me, Dr. RC. And of course, you're tuned into Dare to Soar. My guest, Dr. Ashley Johnson. I know that you are enjoying all that she is sharing. We're dialoguing. She's dropping those golden and platinum nuggets, as you know, I like to share. Your notebook should be absolutely filling up as you're taking those copious notes. That tea, that coffee, or that water, whichever you like to drink and indulge on while this conversation is going on. I want to jump back into our questions. Right before the break, my question for Dr. Johnson was, when we say social justice in social work, what does that truly look like in action, not just theory? She was about to respond. It was time for commercial break, but that's okay. I promised to repeat the question. I just shared it once again. So, Dr. Johnson, please
Mhm.
go ahead and respond to that question.
Um, I the way I look at social justice is really first showing up and really being actionable. And it really means examining when we look at being in the education or educational setting, it's really looking at who has access and who does not. And then it means really challenging those exclusionary like discipline practices or ensuring students have access to mental health supports, family are getting resources, advocating for students, advocating for just families in crisis. And really, when you see even the system itself in an education setting, like creating education trauma for students and families, also standing in that place of addressing that, to me, it's like how social justice shows up. And it's really getting uncomfortable. It's really challenging those practices that you know that aren't in alignment with our code of ethics. And
Mhm.
it's really highlighting and recognizing things that are hiding in plain sight. And so it's dealing with the racial disproportionalities and how it shows up in the data when we're working in the schools. But it also again means using our voice when policies and practices are harming children. But it also means calling out your colleague when their practices are also harming children. That to me is social justice and how it shows up. It's not just a slogan per se, but it's actually showing the measurable outcomes that can actually happen. And it's really building opportunities, building relationships, whether, students feel seen, safe, and valued in schools, but also even on a macro level, like how are you impacting your community and showing up there and sitting at the table, going to school board meetings,
Mhm.
running for political office and positions and those having those conversations. That to me is how social justice shows up, not just in theory and just in conversations, but it's actually being seen and not heard, in a sense where like you go out and you do things and you collaborate and you sit at the table and then you recognize like this is something that needs to shift. So that to me is like really how social justice really shows up with school social work, because it's just not in the school building itself, it's also how we take it outside of the school and we impact the community as well.
Mhm. Now, I want to take this just a little bit deeper, and you did touch on it with your
Okay.
response to that question. So, as I take this a little deeper in this response, how can social workers move from awareness?
Mhm.
Because, and I say this because you know the question that's always asked. Now, what is it that you do?
Right.
So let me repeat that again. How can social workers move from awareness to intentional, sustained advocacy within their schools and communities?
I think, in all honesty, you have to be honest with yourself that there's a problem,
Mhm.
and recognizing and acknowledging that there's a problem, and not just acting like it doesn't exist. Like it only just shows up when I go into work. Like you have to acknowledge the authenticity of that these problems exist in the schools and outside of the schools. And so for awareness, again, the starting point is is awareness. However, I think goes back to what I said earlier, that it requires discipline in this profession. You can begin by like identifying one issue that you can be passionate about, that like this just isn't right, and then consistently create movement with that, whether it's attendance, whether it's discipline, disparities in the community, access to services, family engagement. or policy reform. And again, I'm going back to really being on that macro, level of going to school board meetings, going to your state legislators and advocating for the work. So it's really sustained advocacy also is just building coalitions, like getting involved in your state organizations, getting, building networks and collaborating. But no one changes systems alone. So again, it goes back to like partnering with educators, families, administrators, and community stakeholders, and really realizing who they are and the power that they have, and having that collaborative power as well. And then tell stories ethically. Like storytelling is very important when it comes to our work. And then again remain solution focused. So I think most importantly, advocacy should not just happen when there is a crisis, but it should also just be integrated in our daily practice because it is. And it's just really showing up and just acknowledging as a clinician, as a school social worker, that this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mhm. I love that. 2 points that you brought out. The first one is no one changes systems alone. And
Mm,
that is key. Anytime someone begins to think that they are the Lone Ranger in this or takes credit
mhm.
that they're doing this by themselves, they're living in fairyland.
Right.
So that I just wanted to bring out that point and be very clear about it. So when someone says, "Oh, you did a great job by yourself," no, you didn't. You should give credit where credit is due. Yes,
Mhm.
I appreciate it, but it took all of us doing it together. Yes, I may have been the leader in that role, but it took a lot of hands, a lot of ideas to bring all of this together. And then the other piece is that storytelling piece. I've often shared, and I'm sure that you have as well, that if
Mhm.
we don't tell our stories in the work that we do, others are happy to do it because oftentimes individuals will sit in rooms where we're giving
Mhm.
presentations and absorb like a sponge all that we are sharing and saying, and they'll take it as their own,
Right.
as though they have done this work, and clearly they have not done the work. But when they regurgitate the information, it is like this is the work that they have done, and
Mhm.
no one would know any different because this is how the redelivery comes across. And on that note, it is time for a commercial break. We will be right back, and Dr. Johnson has more to share.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant. Like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Oh, I'm so glad that you guys have returned. I feel your energy. Yes, this is Dare to Soar, and I am Dr. RC. I am here, of course, with the lovely Dr. Ashley Johnson. I know that you're getting so much out of what she's sharing this morning. Justice in action. Guys, hold on to that. I need you to hold on to that. This is such a powerful, powerful conversation that we are having. I want to go on. Our time is going by so fast. We were both chuckling about that, and that's why I'm still chuckling about that as we continue on. Now, Dr. Johnson, you are the recipient of the first National Social Justice Award, which
Mhm.
is both historic and deeply meaningful. In this current climate, where conversations around equity and justice are being challenged, they
Mhm.
truly, truly are. What does receiving this award truly mean to you, and what responsibility do you feel it carries in how you lead, speak, and show up in this work?
Um, I think to start, I was very grateful and appreciative to even be nominated by a colleague of mine out of Illinois who nominated me for this award. And I think it just represents that the work that I'm doing is being seen and acknowledged, but it also means that there's more work to be done and it's just getting started. And so it represents, I guess, the work that I'm doing that's rooted in purpose.
Mhm.
Um, the persistence that I show being on all these committees that I'm on, and and really just like, wait a minute now, we need to talk about this. And it also goes back to the ethics and standards that we have it with, with our practice of standards of just being a part of service. And so it just shows that advocacy matters, even when it's difficult and challenging. It can be exhausting.
Mhm.
This profession takes endurance. And
Yes.
and so I think even when things are difficult or our role or just what we're doing shows up may make people uncomfortable or people misunderstand our work, but we have to stay rooted in our purpose and in our cause. And so I think for me, it's just within this current climate, um, the award carries responsibility in a sense. Of and accountability to continue to do this work, that it's just not about recognition. It's really
Mhm.
about, okay, we recognize this. However, I know that I need to continue to do what I've been doing. And even at a different level, have more endurance or, be more strategic. But it also reminds me that it's not just the destination, it's the assignment. And I think that goes back
Mhm.
to being rooted in purpose in this role and why you signed up to be a social worker to begin with. And it means again that I have to continue to be in this role and continue to show my courage and mentor others and challenge systems and remain vocal when being silent is more easier.
Mhm.
And that fear is there in a sense, or I wouldn't even say call it fear at times. I think it's just being comfortable of
Mhm.
it's not going to impact me too much, but it is. And
Mhm.
so I think it's just not getting a again personal recognition, but it belongs to students that I served, families that I served, colleagues that I collaborate with, these committees that I'm on. Being a community member and who have trusted me in a sense to be like, I want to partner with you. Let's collaborate. Let's work on this. I see your vision and things. So it comes with great responsibility because the work has to continue. And
Yes.
that it's just not me doing this, it's me along with other people that do this work. And I give you credit as well when it comes to this award because again, when I met you, you led with social justice and equity as the foundation, as the first Black president of School Social Work Association of America. So I give credit where credit is due when it comes to leading in this work. And so I think it comes with a lot of responsibility of not just moving forward, but also pulling the ones behind, along with you to say, hey, you can do this too. And this is what it's going to take to continue in this work.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Now, I have to go a little bit deeper with
Okay.
this because in a time where many professionals are experiencing, and it goes back to the profession being challenged, what
Mhm.
some describe as moral fatigue. And that can probably
Mm-hmm.
be a whole panel show. Ooh, that gives me an
Mm-hmm.
idea, but I'm going to leave that right there. Described as moral fatigue or even moral injury within
Mm-hmm.
systems that may not always align with our values or how we do this personally, or how do you navigate these moments with or and strategies,
Mm-hmm.
how the offers to social workers who are striving just to remain effective and ethnically grounded.
Whew, more
I
fatigue.
know. It's just-
um, I think it goes back again to having the endurance. So this is what this profession calls for. Even when we work in systems, and again, I think it goes back to that we're just not serving systems; we're serving people.
Mhm.
And even when there's, that conflict with your professional, personal, political values, you really have to navigate how do you continue to show up in this work. And I think that when it becomes challenging, you need to step back and become reflective and go back to, am I helping or am I harming this system or this profession? And when you realize that, I think that at that time you kind of have to recognize it's time for me to push away from the table, or it's time for me to recognize other people that may need to step away from the table. And so I also believe that there's boundaries um, that come along with recognizing moral fatigue, and again, reflection and mentorship and building your community and network of support. But again, it goes to, no one should carry this work alone, so it shouldn't just be you alone carrying this work. And I think to really encourage practitioners and social workers to really identify the process ethically of what we're doing in this profession, and the challenging experiences that we may encounter, and seek consultation, maybe even seek therapy in a sense, because it does weigh on you. We have to take care of ourselves in this work as well. um, and really write down your concerns, but also look at the small wins that you may get in this work as well, to kind of recognize that morally this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And just remember that preserving your integrity and your professionalism is also part of this work. And it goes back again to recognize the humanity in what we're doing in this work. And you can be committed in this profession without being so consumed, if
Mm.
that makes sense. So yeah, that's how
Oh,
I look
indeed it does. Indeed it
at
does.
it.
And it is time for a commercial break, guys. We will be right back with a little bit more.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth, and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays 10 a.m. Eastern, as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com.
Welcome back once again. Yes, this is Dare to Soar, and I am Dr. RC. We are preparing for our closeout. So, as I wrap up, Dr. Johnson, what advice would you give to emerging social workers who want to use their voice but just may feel hesitant or uncertain?
Mhm. Great question. I get that a lot, even in my while I'm teaching master level students in a social work program, and they kind of feel like I'm just coming out of of school, but they're already working in the profession in a sense. And so one thing that I would really say to emerging social workers is that your voice doesn't necessarily have to be loud to be powerful, but start somewhere. Again, find your passion within this profession and ask thoughtful questions, bring forward ideas. Don't be scared or hesitant just because you're new in the profession that your thoughts don't carry weight, because they do. Also, advocate for one student and start there, or one family, or one policy, or one practice at a time. I think confidence really stems from action, and not before it. So I think just really just remember, like, professionalism and courage can coexist. um, you don't need permission to care deeply or to lead ethically. And I think with this profession, it needs our voice and and our perspective, and we have to be willing to utilize that, and in willingness to challenge what is not working, and just recognize, like, this doesn't align with my code of ethics or standards of practice. And again, just really become that disruptor in this profession, and not let fear consume you so much, when we know that we have an obligation in this profession to really show up for our students, for our families, and people in the community.
Outstanding, outstanding. I love that. As we close out for today, Dr. Johnson, today's conversation is a reminder that social justice is not a moment, it is a movement. It
Mm,
is not comfortable work, but it's necessary work. And in times like these, when systems may shift and voices may be challenged, we are reminded that our presence truly does matter. Our voices matter. Our advocacy matters. And most importantly, our refusal to remain silent matters. To everyone listening today, you do not have to wait for a title to lead.
mm,
You do not. To everyone, don't forget, you do not need permission to advocate. And you do not need to shrink your voice to fit into spaces where you were never designed. You just need to utilize your minds. Because when systems attempt to limit your impact, we expand it. When voices are challenged, we amplify them. And when justice feels uncertain, we stand ever firmer. Thank you for joining us today. And I appreciate each and every one of you always. Continue to rise, lead, and soar. Listeners across the globe, always remember to never, ever be afraid to elevate to new heights as you spread your wings and dare to soar. Thank you for tuning in as always, and be safe and take care of yourselves. Bye bye for now.
This has been Dare to Soar with your host, Dr. RC. Come take a ride and soar to your highest level possible each week on Dr. RC's Dare to Soar.